The one with Joey's dirty day is the 14th episode of the 4th season of Friends. This is directed by Peter Bonerz, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about what happens in this episode, share some thoughts, some personal highlights. It's a really good episode. We also get the introduction of one character and also a guest appearance for another, and I'll talk about those when we get there, but it's definitely a pretty good episode. It actually starts off with Joey getting ready to go fishing. We establish that he's also doing a film with Charlton Heston, and it's a really good introduction. Everybody is in the apartment. The boys are, of course, still in the bigger apartment, and then Chandler comes out of the bedroom. He's miserable. There's a great line that I really like, or a couple of lines, where he says, "Kathy didn't cheat on all of you." And then there's a couple of seconds of pause, and as he approaches Joey, or is about to walk past Joey, he says, "Well, except you." And they have this little hug, and it's a really lovely moment between Chandler and Joey. We learn that Chandler is in, apparently, phase 1, where he's in his sweatpants. Phase 2 is apparently getting drunk and going to a strip club. And phase 3 is picturing yourself with other women. And I think that that's not necessarily 100% accurate for everybody, but if you are going through a breakup, as Chandler is, I think it's important or very useful to remember that actually the phase you're in now, phase 1, not wanting to get dressed, not wanting to leave the house, it won't last forever. And that getting over a breakup is kind of a process. So if you are in phase 1 just now, hopefully the episode can provide some reassurance that actually that phase 1, even though it might feel like it won't last forever. And I'll talk about each of the main parts of the episode in turn. So I'll finish talking about Chandler, and then I'll talk about Joey, and then probably one of the most prominent aspects of the episode, the story with Rachel and Ross. So Chandler ends up sitting in his chair in his sweatpants. He gets up when Joey comes in, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then the next thing we know, he's wearing pants. He is ready to embrace phase 2. Unfortunately, neither Joey nor Ross is around to do that with him. So Phoebe suggests that she and Monica can be the guys, and they end up going to a strip club. And then Rachel comes along, and we spend a bit of time in the strip club. And this is actually something I was thinking about recently, not this particular moment, but I was actually trying to ask myself, how old should a person be before they start watching Friends? And I don't have an answer for that, but I feel like there are definitely some episodes that are really friendly for pretty much anybody of any age, whereas we have episodes like this where they're dealing with slightly more adult themes. And I feel like no two episodes back to back are going to be for the same target audience. Maybe the previous episode would be suitable for slightly younger people. This episode, I'd say, is for slightly older, maybe preteens at a push, teenagers. And it's just something I was thinking about quite recently. This actually came about because I was looking at the Friends Polly Pocket set, which I have to say is amazing. If I wasn't a minimalist, I'd 100% buy that. It is incredible. But it made me question, who's the target audience? Who is this Polly Pocket playset aimed at? And I don't have an answer for that. But I thought it was interesting. And this episode kind of further made me think about that. They then go back to the apartment. It didn't really work. And the girls kind of suggest, well, maybe we'll do what we're good at. And that's listening. Chandler doesn't want to talk. But then they start to talk about imagining themselves with women from the strip club. And Chandler is therefore able to enter phase 3 by picturing them with other women, and he's also in the scenario. And I feel like this is really great as well for people who are perhaps trying to help a friend get past the initial phases during a breakup. I'm not necessarily saying that you should talk about being with other women to help a friend through that, or other men, or whatever it would be. But certainly there are different approaches that people can take that might be helpful. So Chandler's part of the story was pretty interesting. We then move on to Joey. And Joey comes back from a 3-day fishing trip where he's never showered, and he fell into a big tub of worms. So needless to say, he smells, to the point where when he approached Chandler finally got out of the chair. Unfortunately, Joey overslept, and he doesn't have time to shower before he goes to perform in this scene with Charlton Heston. And he turns up, and he sees Charlton Heston, and obviously that's pretty cool that Charlton Heston's in this, and he tries to blame the smell on Heston, and then he finds out that actually it couldn't be Heston because Heston is the only one with a shower in his room. Everything moves so smoothly. Everything is just so beautifully written. Joey goes into the shower and Heston obviously comes in, catches him, and Joey says that he stinks. Heston thinks he means he stinks as an actor, and he gives him this great speech, and I rather enjoyed it, and I thought Heston's role in this was really great. Joey's part of the story was very entertaining. I would have liked to have seen him actually acting more with Heston, as in Joey acting with Heston, but obviously the episode only has a certain length of time, and it's not a problem that we didn't see it. That's just something I would have liked to have a little bit of. We then come to what I consider to be the most important part of the episode. So it starts off with Rachel helping Joshua. Really like Joshua as a character. And then her boss comes in and asks her if she'll accompany his niece to Die Fledermaus that evening. And Rachel says yes, she wants to please her boss, of course. And then Joshua invites her to a nightclub opening. And Rachel doesn't know what to do because, of course, she'd rather go to the nightclub opening and try and start something with Josh. So she tries to get everybody else to go with Emily instead. We learn that this, of course, is a character called Emily. I don't want to say too much about Emily in this in case you haven't seen episodes after this. So I won't talk about the character beyond this episode. But what I will say is it's not the best introduction for a character that I ultimately never really liked. I think Helen Baxendale gave a great performance. I occasionally liked what the character brought to the show, but she's certainly not my favourite character. Rachel ends up asking Ross because nobody else is available, and Ross initially says no. But finally, he agrees, and Emily knocks at the door, and Rachel tells her that there's been a change of plan, and before she's able to explain that change is that Ross is going to be going with her to the opera, Emily goes off on one and starts saying all of these really negative things. And on the one hand, I don't blame her. She's soaking wet, her feet are aching, she's probably exhausted from the travel, but it doesn't necessarily come across as a nice introduction. It's not the most positive introduction to that character. She doesn't come across as the nicest person. And that's not why I don't like the character very much. I just don't think she has the best, most, shall we say, selfless attitude, but I will not say any more than that about the character until we get there going forward. The next day, Rachel actually goes over to the apartment and Monica asks her how it went at the nightclub. And I think what Rachel said is probably not what anybody could have predicted. Rachel explains that she didn't see Joshua, but she did punch a girl in the face. And we find out why this happened. Clearly things didn't go according to plan. Ross then phones and explains he's at a bed and breakfast in Vermont with Emily. Rachel describes her as, and I quote, awful witch. She's an awful witch, apparently, which, to be fair, is the impression she gave with the first meeting. And things are a little bit more delightful because, as she explains, Emily explains that there's a deer just outside eating fruit from the orchard. So he tells Monica that he has to go because there's a deer just outside eating fruit from the orchard. So Monica says to Rachel, Ross had to go because there's a deer just outside eating fruit from the orchard. Yes, it was said 3 times, and it's rather adorable. And then at the end of the episode, Ross comes into Central Park and describes the weekend as being like, and I quote, a dream. And he thanks Rachel for this because he explains to Rachel that he wasn't really comfortable with her talking about Joshua so much. He just didn't feel like he was in a place where he could date other people or even think about being with other people. And now he actually feels differently, and I think that's deeply ironic that that's because of Rachel, as I think it's fair to say that Rachel might not completely be over Ross at this point, even though she has eyes for Joshua. And it's a pretty interesting way to end things. Well, we ended with one of Chandler's dreams, but other than that, it's a really fascinating episode with some really great moments. I like the fact that we are moving forward with Chandler quite quickly. He's not going to be struggling with this breakup for too long, and then we have the introduction of Emily, but I'll say no more about Emily for now. And if you've seen the episodes ahead, I'm sure, or I hope, that everything I've said about my perception of the character will make sense. But if not, I'll talk about that when we get there. And the one with Joey's dirty day is definitely an enjoyable episode.